Mike Naso here with the latest on the tropics. We have a lot to talk about, looking at the Pacific and the Atlantic basins. From left to right on the screen, we have what was Hurricane Hilary. It's now Tropical Storm Hilary, pushing into the state of California. It is the first time a tropical storm has been within the state of California since 1939. That's 84 years. So it has happened before, but it is a rare event. All this moisture pumping in is causing a flood threat. We will talk about that. In the Gulf of Mexico, there's an organizing tropical system that could become a tropical storm as it moves towards Texas and Mexico. We'll talk about that. We have a brand new tropical storm in the eastern Caribbean Sea. Tropical storm watches are out for areas of the Caribbean. We have a tropical depression struggling out here. We have a tropical storm out in the eastern Atlantic, and we have a new wave moving off Africa that looks like that could too develop in the coming days. So a lot to talk about. Let's get right to Hilary since it's impacting land and the United States. As of 2 p.m. Pacific time, Hilary was at 31.3 north, 116.1 west, winds of 60 miles per hour, so it's not a hurricane, but it's still a tropical storm, moving north at 23, and the tropical storm force winds are now impacting areas of the southwestern United States, so areas there of Arizona and Southern California. As the system speeds to the north, it will cause very high winds of 40, 50, 60 miles per hour, and they are not accustomed to that in areas of Southern California the way, say, South Florida would be. Again, it should eventually be a depression weakening as it moves through Nevada, but if you are in the Los Angeles area, the San Diego area, areas there of Bakersfield, Palmdale, all the way towards Vegas and Reno, be on the lookout for gusty winds and heavy rain. Brian McNulty from the website there, great radar website. There's all the moisture pumping in. This is very, very heavy rain, and that is why we have a flood threat. Remember how frequently it floods in California, very easily during heavy rains. So if you have a tropical system pumping moisture, this is only going to exacerbate what would normally be a rainfall flood threat along with the heavy wind to cause a lot of problems. But again, all of this moisture pumping here through Southern California into Nevada as well as Arizona. The satellite imagery of Hilary, not looking impressive, but the center does appear to be moving into the state of California, which is the first time, like I said, in 84 years that a tropical storm will be over the state of California. Very, very rare. And we have had some evacuations and reports of flooding and all that. You know, it happens frequently in California, so it's only going to be worse with the impact of a tropical cyclone. Josh Morgerman from iCyclone, a very, very good guy, a hurricane chaser, one of the best ever. He tweeted out that unprecedented now means, number one, something that hasn't happened since I've taken an interest in the topic. Number two, something that hasn't happened before social media. And number three, something that has last happened more than 25 years ago. Or number four, something that happens sometimes but I didn't know about it. And I agreed with him. When I was a kid, as I said, the only way to find out about moisture from Hurricane Hilary over California would have been to look at the Weather Channel. Never would you have heard about it on CNN or Fox or NBC. Maybe a little blurb if the damage was really bad. But times have changed, and we now live in this social media world to where everything's climate change and everything's caused by something. Remember, hundreds of years ago, they used to burn witches in New England when a nor'easter or a blizzard would run through. So it's a reminder to not buy into the media frenzy. Dr. Philip Klotzbach from Colorado State University, great guy. I've met him on several occasions. Colorado State University hurricane forecaster. He tweeted out a picture of the late, great Dr. Bill Gray, also a great guy I had the pleasure of interviewing on a couple of occasions. Every August 20th, Dr. Gray would ring a bell denoting the start of the most active portion of the Atlantic hurricane season, August 20th. And we have a lot out there to talk about in the Atlantic. Here's Tropical Storm Franklin. This is a brand new tropical storm, and it's at 14.6 north, 67.1 west, winds of 45 miles per hour, so it's already a mid-range tropical storm, moving west-northwest at 14, 1,002 millibar pressure, and we now have a tropical storm watch along the coastline of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and that will likely be changed to a warning and maybe a hurricane watch if Franklin strengthens. Now, it's going to undergo some wind shear. However, it's eventually going to turn northward and make landfall sometime late Tuesday or Wednesday along areas there of the coastline of Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and then push on very close to the Turks and Caicos Islands, and then head towards the northeast in the general direction of moving out to sea, but strengthening into a hurricane as it does so. The wind shear is impacting Franklin, and that's why it's going to struggle to become a hurricane before Hispaniola. This should eventually decrease, but on that map you can see that westerly wind shear impacting it, and on the satellite you can see that even better. It's trying to burst, but it is getting sheared. So that's keeping Franklin in check, but the waters are very warm, and it should eventually strengthen enough to be at least a strong tropical storm before making landfall over the island of Hispaniola. But again, Haiti is a very impoverished nation. It's one of the most third world of all the third world countries, and so any flood threat or wind threat from any tropical cyclone is a serious risk of loss of life. Here's the computer models for Franklin. Again, we do have a ridge of high pressure steering it, but we'll have troughiness coming through off the eastern seaboard. That's going to weaken the ridge, so the high pressure will back off, and that's what's going to allow Franklin to slide north and northeast. And it looks like there could be some weak steering currents in about 4 or 5 days, so Franklin may mill around out here as a hurricane. So if you're in Bermuda and even on the eastern seaboard, you'll want to keep an eye on Franklin until we know for sure that he's going to head straight out to sea. Also, if you're up in the Canadian Maritimes, remember Fiona last year? Hopefully Franklin doesn't try anything. The key messages for Franklin: number one, it is expected to approach Hispaniola late on Tuesday and move across the island Wednesday as a tropical storm. There's the risk of flooding, obviously, heavy rainfall, strong winds, dangerous waves. And number two, heavy rainfall is expected across Puerto Rico as well throughout the middle of the week. That could cause flash and urban flooding, river rises, and mudslides. And across Hispaniola, significant and potentially life-threatening flash flooding is possible Tuesday into Wednesday. And again, there's the information for those Spanish viewers. We do have the rainfall forecast. Look at this, 2 to 4 to 6 inches over Puerto Rico, and there could be higher amounts. So Puerto Rico, you're going to get rain from Franklin even if the tropical storm moves to your west. Emily, we wasted a name. Tropical Storm Emily is 50 miles an hour. Looks like it's not going to live long. It's going to be out there and dissipate eventually by the time Wednesday rolls around. It's moving west-northwest at 10 at 20.2 north, 39.4 west. Again, Emily, we've used that name a lot. We used it in 1981 for the first time. It was a major hurricane. It actually took a track very much like Franklin should, but it was a Category 3 over the Dominican Republic, caused a lot of problems in 1987, didn't retire the name. It was a Category 3 that impacted the Outer Banks in 1993, didn't retire the name. It was a Category 5 that ravaged Mexico in July of 2005, didn't retire the name. It's never been destructive enough to retire the name. And with Emily being weak and remaining out at sea, we will likely, almost certainly, see the name Emily again when we use this name list again in 6 years in the year 2029. Tropical Depression 6 didn't become Emily, and it looks like it's dissipating now. It's getting sheared from Tropical Storm Franklin to its west, and on the map there's Franklin bursting in the Caribbean, shearing our depression down here. There's not very much left of it at all. It couldn't get a name. There's Tropical Storm Emily. There's the wave leaving Africa. We're going to watch this as it moves on towards the west-northwest. This one could eventually be maybe more of a west runner down the road, but that's a long, long way away. There's the 7-day graphic from the National Hurricane Center showing Franklin, the tropical depression, and Emily. The tropical depression should dissipate. Emily should eventually dissipate. Franklin, we're going to be watching that. That'll be the main story. Along with the Gulf of Mexico, this area here in the Gulf looking favorable. Here's the latest satellite imagery, the visible, and this is obviously trying to organize here north of western Cuba into a tropical depression. It looks like it's going to move straight on towards the west underneath a ridge of high pressure, and relatively quickly. The longer it stays over water, the more a chance it has to strengthen, but don't rule out a tropical storm landfall in South Texas or northern Mexico. This looks similar to the track of Hurricane Hannah in 2020 or even Hurricane Erica in 2003. Both became Category 1 hurricanes. So we're going to watch this carefully. If you're in Texas, keep an eye on it. Even Louisiana, right now the models seem in pretty good agreement, straight west, and that could bring moisture to the western Gulf of Mexico. If it gets a name, by the way, the next name on the list would be Gert. So we would have Gert in the Gulf of Mexico. Franklin, by the way, was the replacement name for Floyd after Hurricane Floyd devastated the Bahamas and the East Coast way back in 1999. I was 11 years old tracking it back then. Crazy. So that'll do it for the tropics. Very, very active. And again, Dr. Gray said every August 20th things heat up, and that is true. We have the flood threat there with the moisture along the California coastline. Is definitely causing bad impacts. We'll keep an eye on that. We have our system in the Gulf that could become a tropical storm and head towards Texas and Mexico. We already have a new tropical storm in the Caribbean. Tropical storm watches out for Hispaniola. We've got a depression dying off here. We've got Tropical Storm Emily moving out to sea and a new wave off of Africa. So a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 impact in the Atlantic and Pacific with tropical cyclones. So we'll keep an eye on all these, especially the flood threat from Hilary, the system in the Gulf, and Franklin in the Caribbean Sea. I'm Mike Naso. I'll have more next time. Stay tuned.